Hey everyone, welcome to Gaming in the Keats. I'm your host Chris, and today joined with me is my good friend James, aka Vamps in Maryland. How's it going, bud?
Oh, it's going all right, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy to be making this video. And today we're talking about the top 5 reasons to play the Ninth Age, specifically after the Old World release. Um, so, James, why are we making this video right now?
So, thanks for having me on. And primarily, we're making this video to promote the Ninth Age, which is this game that you and I have both enjoyed for several years. The Old World release is imminent, and that certainly creates more options within the community of kind of what game to play. So that's definitely one reason why we're here kind of advocating for the game that we enjoy playing. And yeah, I think I think I'm ready to get into it.
All right. And then, we're making this video for a combination, I would say, of people who've played the Ninth Age and who've been enjoying it, but are perhaps feeling a bit disillusioned or not quite happy with it. Um, we're making it for people who maybe have had a taste of the Ninth Age but never really got into it. And we're also making this video for new players as well, for people who haven't tried the Ninth Age yet. So,
Maybe people who are just unsure what they're going to be playing with the imminent
right.
release of the Old World.
And that being said, I also want to state that what this video is not is it's not an attack on the old world or Games Workshop specifically. We do make comparisons between the two systems just because the Ninth Age was so closely related to Warhammer Fantasy initially. Um, but what I also want to point out is that any links that we happen to talk about in terms of material for the Ninth Age or any sort of community um, support, we're going to be posting in the description below in this YouTube video. So, yeah, with that, let's get right into it. So, we of course want to talk about who we are as community members of the Ninth Age, and so yeah, you and I are both in the Titans of Ninth Club, where we play mostly at the Titans Games and Hobbies in Timonium, Maryland, and we incorporate a lot of people from the Baltimore, DC metro area, and so in the United States, and aka the Mid-Atlantic, if you will. And both you and I have been playing since the Ninth Age's inception. Um, I would
Yeah.
say that my personal level involvement is really just casual and like semi-competitive play. I would say semi-competitive for me means like, I try to make a tournament here and there. Um, but it's not something that like I invest a lot of time in. um, However, I do want to try my best. And as well as I recently became a content creator to essentially accomplish that goal. And I started making videos in February 2023 when I was living in Berlin, Germany. But what about you, James? What's your involvement like?
Well, on the personal side of things, I think I'd describe myself in much the same way. Um, I do like to attend what tournaments I can and kind of give it a go. Um, on the community side of things, I am the Army community support for Vampire Covenant, which is a volunteer position within the Ninth Age project. And what that entails is essentially being a liaison between the community and the other areas of the project. So I'm involved in a lot of feedback gathering would kind of probably be my main task.
Cool. And then, yeah, these pictures here are myself, top left, Chris, another member of our club, and you. We've all attending S1N here, driving up, and then you giving the double thumbs up right next to that courtesan of Sibaresh I took for my demons.
I was hyped when it survived that game. I was so happy.
Oh gosh, me too. It saved me a few victory points by surviving. But yeah, so let's get into what the Ninth Age is for anyone who's new, um, or who's maybe have heard about it but hasn't really taken the time to dive into what is the Ninth Age. And so it's a rank and file fantasy game that was developed after Games Workshop removed Warhammer Fantasy from its roster. And so it was initially developed for Warhammer Fantasy community members. It is very, very similar in that it is played on the tabletop using miniatures to represent an army and simulates a battle against an opponent. It incorporates, much like the old Warhammer Fantasy did, a movement, magic, shooting, and close combat mechanic, all using D6s and D3s to determine the outcome, to tell the story, if you will, of what happens in the battle. And another fun, unique aspect of the Ninth Age is that each faction has its own unique combination of strengths, weaknesses, and play styles.
Indeed, indeed, and yeah, um, this kind of these kind of epic battles that are taking place when we put our miniatures on the tabletop all take place within a unique fantasy setting that has its own background, has its own art and stories, and one example of that is up on your screen right now, which is the world map for the Ninth Age.
Yeah, and so that brings us to our next, our first point here of one of our top 5 reasons to play the Ninth Age is that it's a community-driven game, all volunteer based. It's a game by war gamers for war gamers, and it has these 4 main elements you see here. So it's the focus on the quality of the game, not sales. There's no need to keep up with the meta. That being said, and therefore the game really tries to, or the people involved in creating and enhancing this game try to maintain balance for both casual and tournament play. And that being said, there is a commitment for incorporating feedback in terms of improving this game from community members.
Indeed. And so, just to expand upon, I'll say like the first 2 points, the focus on the quality of the game and no need to pay to keep up with the meta. In other games, right, you see power creep based on kind of wanting to sell the newest toy. And, with the Ninth Age being a nonprofit and model agnostic, you're just not going to see that. And then, of course, I'm going to relate the balance to the commitment to incorporating feedback as well. Feedback is one way in which the project, one kind of a source of data which the project uses to balance the game. Another source is just the scores of games, right? And the data that the project gathers. And I don't know if you wanted to mention a word or two about that.
Well, right. And so, one of the primary websites for creating, I guess, utilizing or playing this game is New Recruit. And so when you submit your games to New Recruit, all that and the outcomes, all of that information is stored and the data is analyzed. And so what we end up seeing here in the community is that all armies, I kid you not, all armies are averaging between 9 to 11 points in a 20-point system. So the game is played with a max amount of 20 points to be achieved for victory.
10-10
And
is a
then
draw, right?
10-10 is a draw. And so the fact that you can have all armies here, and these are all, of course, games that are recruited in New Recruit. This isn't, you know, anything that's recorded or anything that's put into New Recruit is recorded. And so to have that sort of range between 9 and 11, I think is rather remarkable. And it shows, to me, it shows a great level of commitment to trying to keep balance within the game itself.
Yes. And I believe that average, if I'm not mistaken, is taken from like thousands of games, because New Recruit is the primary platform that the Ninth Age uses for um, tournament organization and kind of like recording scores. All of those results are um, exported into like the data bank.
And then to expand upon the feedback point is that it's not just the data that's being analyzed, it's the surveys and the community involvement that members send to, say, people like yourself, in terms of, you know, what is working, what's not working, and then that feedback is then incorporated into changing or adapting any sorts of rules or questions involved thereof.
Correct. And so it's not just balancing the armies against each other, but it's also the internal balance of your army. So there's not dead entries in a book. So, I'll often be creating feedbacks on like what are the, 3 unit entries that like most need some help, and what are the 3 that are maybe like a little bit too good for like the points that they cost.
Mm. So that brings us to our, speaking of cost, that brings us to our slide number, there's our second point here. And so it's the comparison of cost here of playing the Ninth Age versus other games. And the main point here that I want to focus on is that um, aside from the miniatures, aside from that element and the hobby element in of itself, the rules, the main rules, the army supplements, the lore, the magazines, like any sort of volunteer-based content, anything that's derivative of the Ninth Age,
Yeah. Skirmish
and the
games
materials.
and I can't remember, like scenario supplements, skirmish games, Essence of
Tour
War.
pack, magic cards, yeah, like anything, like it's free. It's free.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
so, of course, comparing that to pretty much any gaming system is probably a pretty favorable comparison for the Ninth Age. Of course, here we're comparing it to the old world, because we're you know providing comparative advantages that the Ninth Age has over the old world. Um, so yeah, it's all on the screen, right? So 150 US dollars to play your army if you want all the rules for your army in the old world game system. That's 70 for the rule book, 50 for the compendium that contains your army list, and another 30 if you want extra options for force organization and special characters and whatever else they have in that book.
right, and so then, this picture here that you see, is comparing right now, obviously it's just one comparison example here, but it's comparing the same unit across, say, a 3D printed company where you can order these models on Etsy versus ordering it from Games Workshop for Yeah, for significantly less, $28 versus $80 for the same number of models. I've definitely heard that the argument can be that, like, well, what you're paying for is, much of a higher quality, but at this rate, with the technology of 3D printing, I would argue that you can achieve that same quality. Um,
Yeah, especially with the old world, primarily being re-releases of older sculpts. Some of the newer 3D sculpts might even be more to your taste. They might be less. It is a matter of taste sometimes, right? Like which miniatures you like most. But um, yeah, when you're comparing the cost of getting into the ninth age to the cost of getting into the old world, um, the barrier to entry is much lower for the ninth age.
mhm. And this isn't, I would argue that it's not just the old world, it's any of these fantasy, or a lot of these fantasy tabletop games. Like, I'm thinking also, for example, of, oh gosh, I was thinking Conquest.
Conquest is
Yeah.
expensive, right? Mantic miniatures are not as expensive as Warhammer miniatures, but they don't look great, and they don't look great, and they're still more expensive than 3D prints.
Um, and
Some of them
so,
look good, right? I'm generalizing here, but
right, right, right. Yes, it goes back to your point, of course, of like taste, but at the same time, like, yeah, like I can get the army I want and have it be like its own custom flavor and feel, for much less. That's sort of just the general point here. And have all the materials I need to play that army, say rules, compendium, etc., just online. Like, it's just there. I can print it out. It's free.
yep, download the PDF, import it into your iBooks or whatever you know whatever app you use on your phone.
Right. And so, going into point number three, which is essentially, another reason to play the ninth age, is that, um, if you're making that either transition, or if you're, thinking about completely converting from the ninth, back to the old world, something to keep in mind, I think, is that, Games Workshop has already replaced Warhammer Fantasy once, and therefore, and the way that that was done, which I know you can, probably describe a little bit more of that, it created a massive distrust, I would say, within the community. And so the whole point of this is that, like, if, because it's a for-profit system, if the old world, is to not do well, if it's to not sell, then, like, how can you trust Games Workshop to continue supporting it?
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. I agree with this point, and I do think that Games Workshop lost a lot of trust with its customers with the way they just kind of ditched Warhammer Fantasy. Like a lot of players of that game felt left behind. And just for comparison's sake here, right? When, for example, Fantasy Flight Games announced that they were no longer going to be producing new content for their kind of like dungeon crawler Star Wars game called Imperial Assault. They basically said this game is complete. We're classifying this game as complete, which means we're no longer producing new content for it. Like we'll still support it. Like when stock is low, like every once in a while we'll like reprint the things that people are buying. But essentially this game's complete. What Games Workshop did with Warhammer Fantasy was just completely eradicate the game and kind of shove this new game in our face that was like nothing like it. And then of course having kind of abandoned that marketplace for a rank and file fantasy game. Games like the Ninth Age came in, had success. So did other rank and flank games, and now GW is coming back to the party. It doesn't necessarily mean that kind of like the players that were left behind or felt left behind are just going to kind of automatically go back.
But you can make the argument, or well, I'm sitting here thinking off the top of my head here, that like perhaps it's just like does it matter if the trust was severed with any of the older players? Like if your goal is to just, as a company, your goal is to just really focus on just getting in new players, right, to a new market base, so to speak, and really promote this game to get a new market base. But then I guess my counterpoint is just like, well, the moment it stops selling,
Right.
it's just like, are you going to do the same thing again?
Right. But it's also just the way they did it, right? And that's also kind of what I tried to illustrate. It's not just that they stopped supporting the game; it was a business decision to stop supporting the game. But it was like they erased it.
Right. And so that being said, the Ninth Age, like, yes, if all of our community members just decide to no longer invest their time into this game anymore, all of that material is still going to be there. You can still play it, and it's admittedly I have a hard time believing, with the amount of effort and time that has been put over all these years into maintaining and developing the Ninth Age, it's hard for me to truly believe that all community members are just going to at some point just cease. I mean, I'm sure the game it has waxing and waning of popularity, no doubt, but it's not, at the end of the day, it's not for profit driven. It's a nonprofit, so
Right.
the
Correct.
motivation to sell is not there, or for selling is not an issue in this context.
Yeah, it's not going to be removed because it had a bad year of sales.
Right. So, moving into our fourth point here, is that the Ninth Age supports those armies that are no longer being supported by Games Workshop, and that was always sort of the point, is that any faction that you had originating from Warhammer Fantasy is playable and then is now expanded upon, and we even have the introduction of new supplement factions into the Ninth Age. And so you have now these 16 original factions that have now been, like, the rules have been, I would say, changed enough so that the armies have a relatively different play style. And then you have the supplements off of these armies as well.
Right. So the 16 factions, 16 main factions of the Ninth Age, right, were designed so that players who played Warhammer Fantasy could use their army in a different game that kind of had the feel of like an epic fantasy battles game.
Mm-hmm.
So those legacy factions that you see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, if you played one of those factions and you won't be able to play that faction in the old world, you can play it in the Ninth Age.
Yep. Because here, this is a statement from the Warhammer community, from a Games Workshop member here, is that essentially, aside from the free PDFs for these legacy factions, they won't be receiving ongoing support and won't be legal for tournament usage. So with the Ninth Age, Everything is legal.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, of course. It's obviously up to the different tournament organizers and what they allow and what they don't allow.
It's model agnostic, right? And there's an acceptance of all um, flavors of armies.
Right. And so we're going to get into that point a little bit later with our slides showcasing the different unique flavors of some of our club members and other club members in the region, and showcasing how they create their own flavor for their army.
Indeed, indeed.
And so,
Here we
oh,
go.
did you touch on another point, James?
No, no, here we go.
Nice. And so going into that flavor aspect here, the Ninth Age is thus a perfect game for 3D printing hobbyists, because of its emphasis on model agnosticism, which essentially, for if you're wondering what that means, it's essentially saying you can print out or purchase this model, and it represents whatever unit you wish it to represent on the game board. Some people tried to be as accurate or as close as possible to what was originally conceived in terms of the Warhammer Fantasy element. Some people have completely just said, "Nope, I'm doing it my own unique style."
Whatever
And
your
both are fine.
inspiration is, right? It's
And
whatever your
everything
inspiration is.
right, whatever your inspiration is, and everything in between is fine. And so, yeah, it's basically the whole point is your imagination is your own limit here.
Very nice. Yeah, that's it. Sorry for over talking you there.
All good, all good. Hey, we're we're ad libbing, we're improvising a bit. We're trying to make it interesting here. But aside from this 3D printed overlord on a great bowl of Shamut, yeah, let's get into this. Let's get into some of the hobbying here. This is what
That's a
we've all
laptop,
come
by the
to
way. That's a laptop, not a base.
do. Nice. All right. So yeah, what do we got?
So yeah, we've got some lovely 3D prints here. All of these were printed out by Chris in our gaming group, the other Chris in our gaming group, and
Let's see which one.
yeah, on the left we've got a hunter, or what I perceive as being a hunter from the Ogre Khan's army book. He's got a big tentacle with him. But yeah, and then we've got a 3D printed Dwarf Lord from the Highland Miniatures range, and then I don't know what range this giant's from, but I know it was most exquisitely painted by our club member Carrick.
Yeah, and ah man, it's just cool because you really get to have this fun sort of customizable element to your hobbying experience here. And so, speaking of customizable, um, you have from the Green Dragons crew, Brian and his Halfling army that represents. I think he uses this one as Empire of Sonstal. And so all of these miniatures here are it's a halfling theme. So yeah, you got that awesome steam tank in the back. Got a
Yeah,
giant. You got some electoral cav. You got a halfling riding. It would appear to be perhaps it's on a young griffin or something to that effect, or a Pegasus.
yeah. We've got the Halfling kind of hot pot type model, which I think is representing of an organ gun.
Oh, nice.
So just another beautiful example of like an army on a display board here. And apologies for not supplying a clearer picture.
That is all good. And again, we're showcasing Brian's work here. These are some mushroom creatures representing Dryads in his Sylvan Elf army, and he's even got oh gosh, Dryad Ancient.
Yeah,
Yeah, I always forget that character. Um,
Dryad Ancient, and yeah, again, just kind of exquisitely painted by Brian as well.
right. He's. I think we're going to be using a bit of his work here, going into his more of the Sylvan elves. He's got more halflings on pigs. He's got halflings riding bees. Um, it's just awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
He's got his treekin as well. So, the point here is to showcase all the variety of factions that can just be expanded upon with your own imagination.
yes, yes, and Brian is very good at that, and we're totally using him to promote the ninth age here.
I know he's won. I think you've mentioned this before. He's won best painted multiple times in his
Yes,
hobby
yeah.
and career.
Best painted, favorite army, any like hobby award, he's always in the running.
And so then here we've got a picture of two different takes of the same unit. So this is a Vampire Covenant account on a zombie dragon. And then on the left, yeah, if you want to go into more details of these two models here, James.
Yeah, two excellent models that look very different from each other, representing the same thing. Absolutely love Brian's rooster, undead rooster, and then on
So,
the right, Chris Mince's zombie dragons. So yeah, fantastic centerpiece for an army.
yeah, I'm getting this like imagery here. It's just like this model catwalk showcasing of different armies and different hobbyists. You just need some like techno music blaring in the background.
Oh man, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
It
But
sounds funny.
what you can imagine is minions on rockets
Oh
representing
yeah,
the rocket battery and an overlord on a bull of Shamut for the infernal dwarves um, by
yeah.
Simon from which club again?
ECW. So that's
Ah,
the
yeah.
New York club, and I don't know how active they are as a club right now, but Simon's been an amazing part of the community. Done some tournament organizing, and you know he obviously has a very creative side as well because this army is just fantastic.
Oh gosh, yes. Uh like oh, I just love that bull of Shamut. Like overlord, and then here are more pictures of his army in action. Um,
Yeah, I love
oh
the
gosh, yeah.
contrast on the left. The contrast between like the Frost Phoenix and the minions. They're just like welcome to our cartoon world. We're here to blow you up.
Yeah, like you got the rocket battery there. You got, I don't know what that little cow represents. I don't know what model, but I'm sure Simon can say. You can
Oh
comment
yeah.
below. Yeah, I think those are Torok anointed on the right side there, like the monstrous cavalry unit there.
Yeah, I think that's right. The one you were talking about might be the Lamasu. I'm not sure.
Ah, okay. Well, see, this is also sort of the fun part about playing this game here is that when you're meeting your opponent and seeing their army across the table, like you get to have that fun conversation with them, be like, "Oh yeah, this represents that." I know some people sometimes, um, yeah, I know some people can get maybe annoyed with how things can look or represent or what they're supposed to represent, but you know what? Like for me personally, I'm all for the absurdity and the
Yeah.
silliness of it because after all, like this is a hobby and we're playing with toys on a table and rolling dice to create fantasy.
Yeah, like let people play with the toys they want to play with, right? Like if someone's gone through the effort of kind of making a fantastic army like this, I don't think it's too bad to just like have a conversation and talk through what all the units are. And I will say because I know for a fact for this army that Simon actually has a um, printout that he gives his opponents, which has pictures of all his units and it's labeled what they all are as well.
Right, right.
So
Um,
he's gone kind of above and beyond to kind of make it easy to know what his units are representing.
Indeed. And then going into the wonderful creative mind of Phil Call with the Juice Crew, and also Green Dragons, depending on which side of the allegiance he's on. You know, we're seeing here fighting those minions are some gnomes riding robot chickens.
Robot chicken gnome.
So to go into more detail of this army, at least, I mean, sure, Phil can of course comment below and give us more info, but you know, he designed this army, so this is an added element to the 3D printing aspect here. Is that he created the files, he created the STLs, and then printed them out himself. And so this army is representing Empire of Sonstal.
Yes, yeah. And then still, of course, painted his models and did all kind of like the usual hobbying stuff that you would do if you just purchased the miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
So this really kind of showcases that especially with the ninth age, like you can take the hobbying aspect kind of, I guess you can get as involved as you want on the hobbying aspect.
For sure. And then continuing on with showcasing, I guess, Joey from CGL, and then again, Brian. We got some tomb cataracts representing or being represented here in the Undying Dynasties faction, and then we have a Titano Pod, the giant brontosaurus.
Oh, one of the best units in the whole ninth age, in my opinion.
I mean, if you're gonna make a Titanopod model, like, it shouldn't be able to fit in any sort of picture you take of it.
Yeah, like look at that, man. You've got to take like 3 pictures of it in order to see the whole thing. Yeah, fantastic, fantastic model, and just a really fun unit, I think, in the book.
And then going further into Joey's army, if you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, so Joey's another fantastic hobbyist. These are all another kind of a person with a 3D printer and is quite clearly very good at kind of getting great quality prints. Um, but yeah, on the right, we have an Arc of Ages with a Hierophant Wizard Master. And then top left, we've got some Winged Reapers. And bottom left is another probably better picture of the Tomb Cataphracts. And yeah, just very, very envious of how good a hobbyist Joey is, because these are fantastic.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, I love just the poses of those cobras. Like, they're just awesome. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, everything here is just. I know they're undead, right? But he's really kind of like brought them to life. I don't know. I think I think the prints are great, but I think how he's painted them as well, and the basing just kind of brings them to life.
And so, bringing to life some of our own club members here, we have one of our club mates, Aaron, playing Orcs and Goblins here, and these are some savage orcs on the left. And these are metal models, you said, right?
Yep, they're metal miniatures. I cannot remember what manufacturer produced them, but you know, again, another fantastic hobbyist. Aaron's done an absolutely fantastic job with his Orcs and Goblins, and yeah, they look great.
And then we have on the right, we have a BSB with their Oh, I was gonna say silver helms. Oh gosh, what are they called? Highborn
Uh,
lancers.
yeah, they're the highborn lancers.
The
With
Highborn lancers. Didn't you say yeah? So this was also 3D printed. No.
Yep, 3D printed. Brandon from the Titans of Ninth Club. He's another 3D printing hobbyist and um, another very good hobbyist because yeah, this unit looks freaking awesome. I don't. I think the picture we've got. They're not quite finished, but looking great nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think you know it just goes to show like how much fun you can really just have in terms of with the model agnosticism and just really making this game your own personal style and flavor. I think more so than a lot of other um, games. But then, I mean, obviously that's my opinion. But at the same time, like, man, it's just
You can come
it's
to the
kind of,
table right with something. You can come to the table with something that was born in your mind, and it's not going to be frowned upon.
indeed. And then also the fun part is you can create an army. I think for multiple factions, you could have a theme. You can make if you really try to tie in, say, with the theme here. Um, I know, for example, my Demon Legion's army, you can also, like, the whole point was that it was created where every model has wings, and it's like this angelic descent from the heavens.
Yeah,
But then you can also use this. It's for the same base sizes. You can use those, say, for Warriors of the Dark Gods. Um,
yeah, that's right. That's right. And so right, the model agnosticism, you know, it's fantastic for kind of it's a fantastic playground for like your creativity, right? It's a fantastic opportunity to um, do one project that can like represent multiple armies, and it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of um, just do something to your own unique tastes, right? Whether that's um, whether you like your miniatures to look realistic and you're inspired by historical armies, or whether you want to do something completely abstract that's to the point of absurd. It's really up to you, and I think that's the a great selling point of this hobby, and in particular the ninth age.
so with all of that high from this eye candy here, just want to say thanks everyone so much for watching. We hope if you're new, we hoped this video inspired you to want to play the Ninth Age. If you're a veteran player or have dabbled with the Ninth Age, yeah, we hope it has reignited that fire inside. Um,
Indeed.
and again, all links will be posted below in the description for any of the Ninth Age forum or the information that we've stated earlier. And James, thank you so much again for doing this video with me.
You are very welcome. It was my pleasure to be your guest today, and happy gaming, everyone.
Yeah, happy gaming. Ciao, ciao for now, y'all.